Welcome to the Business Results Program. This is how you can transform yourself, your team, and your whole company. My name is Winiarski. I'm the CEO of Win Enterprises, LLC, and this video is us recording a podcast episode. Podcast Business Results Radio. Look up businessresultsradio.com or go check it out on iTunes or one of the other podcast platforms. And do subscribe and do give a 5-star review. Now, you as a business leader, we get what you're going through. You've got overwhelm and stress and frustration. You have high expectations on your shoulders, some of which you put there yourselves. Why can I say this? Because we, our team, we've experienced this ourselves. We have been business leaders. We know what it's like. And boy, how cool is it that you have this resource. You can listen to this podcast, gain some insights about what you can do differently, gain some ideas, some strategies that you can put in place right away to make your life easier. That's what we're after here. We want your life to be easier because being a business leader does not have to be this challenging, doesn't have to be this hard. And we want you to exceed your expectations, excel, and achieve the results you want, get your team to thrive, and your company to just absolutely go right through the roof. And you can do that here. Enjoy this episode. Hey everyone, Pete Winiarski here. I'm with Katrina Shaw, one of our powerful executive mentors on the Win Enterprises team. Hello, Katrina.
Hello.
Hello. So what we do each time we get together is we take some of those issues that you as a business leader probably have gnawing at you. It's probably like one of those, you're walking down the street as a paper boy and your dog comes up and bites your pant leg and won't let go of you. We're going to help you take care of that dog right now. So we're just kicking around some ideas. We said, stress reduction techniques is probably a good topic today. I just had a conversation, Katrina, with a client right before this call. And she owns a small business. She has tremendous potential, and yet she's working her tail off. She doesn't have the resources on her team to support her because she doesn't have the cash flow to pay for it. And she's looking, down the road of how do I balance this all out? And clearly you could hear the stress in her voice. You could almost, we didn't do a Zoom, but if we did a Zoom, you'd be like, probably see her head in a vice. It'd be one of those situations. And the thing is, that's like every business leader on the planet. Some manage it better than others, but the conditions are always there. So you're in the pressure cooker. You're the boss. You've got to make decisions. You've got to make sure that you're hitting the goals and the expectations. So big companies, you've got the board of directors and shareholders and stock price to worry about. Small companies, you've got cash flow to worry about. And another one of our clients, they just lost their biggest customer, and like 25% of their revenue disappeared like that.
Yeah.
So these are the realities.
Yeah.
What do you do? Let's just talk about that, just free flowing a little bit. What can a business leader do when they're in the pressure cooker so that dog that's gnawing on their pant leg, how do we get that dog away and come back to center, come back to calm?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason that we sort of get to this, place of just so much pressure and is that we are so hyper-focused on fix the problem, right? Which, is a piece of it, definitely, is, okay, how can we sit down, brainstorm solutions, think about this differently, get creative. However, when we're hyper-focused on only fixing the problem, we can quickly spin our wheels and sort of feel helpless if nothing's sort of giving, and if we're just not able to find another revenue source right away, or whatever the problem is, right? So then the pressure just adds and compounds, and you get to a point of just feeling like there's no way out of this. Like I can't fix this. So I think there's a lot of value in taking a step back, finding ways to alleviate stress, to ground yourself, to get your head in a different headspace kind of thing, so that you can kind of come at problems differently or think about them differently, right? And I think every business is going to face this kind of thing at some point or another. So learning to sort of ride the wave in a grounded way, instead of trying to swim against the wave until you are drowning.
Right, right. It's funny you just used the wave. I actually was caught in a riptide once in Mexico, and we were having fun in the surf. Next thing you know, we're like, oh my God, we're like 100 feet from shore. I hope there's no sharks, right? It was one of those, that was a momentary panic stress situation. Of course, you swim sideways to the parallel to the shore, and you can get out of the riptide, and then you can come back. And thankfully, we all knew how to swim, so we were okay. But we were also like the only ones on the beach, so that's a pressure cooker situation where it's a little bit different. The idea of what you just described with hyper focused on the problem. Let's say that you just lost your biggest customer, and now you're like, I've got to find a way to replace that revenue, or I got to let like 25% of my people go because we can't support them without the revenue. So let's start, because you introduced this idea of being hyper focused on, I've got to fix the problem, and this obsession that we as business leaders will create around that. How do you put that problem into perspective so that you're not so hyper focused on it?
It's a tough question, because perspective is an interesting thing, and it's not just the flip of a switch and be like, okay, yeah, shift my perspective, right? Sometimes getting to a new perspective is like deep and powerful learning, and it takes sometimes it takes hitting rock bottom. Sometimes it takes having a bit of a meltdown. Sometimes it takes failure for us to really learn a different perspective. And if you think about it in a different context, like, here I am, I grew up in Canada, I can take my whole life for granted. I have a lot of access to, water and clean forests and all kinds of things. And then I travel and I go to another world, and I'm like, oh my God, people don't live like this everywhere. And so it's not just like I can like read a book that like people live differently or see it in a commercial to really like experience it or feel it. It's like, it doesn't happen until I actually get there, get to a new place, and then I have the perspective shift. So similarly, it doesn't just happen to us because someone tells us or because we know we have to shift our perspective. And so, a piece of it is again, this is perspective. It's kind of an interesting thing, but a piece of it is maybe learning to look at business as or not business, but failure or challenges as ways to grow even bigger. And when we can look at them when we can look at problems like that, like, this is a way for me to really succeed or grow in a different way, already we've transformed our perspective in how we're looking at these things, right? And that can help us then approach issues or concerns or problems or challenges or whatever it is in a different sort of headspace. But then from there might be further perspective shifts that need to occur. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and so one of the things I'm hearing and have practiced this a little bit is, it's kind of like, what are those guiding principles that you might have chosen in the first place that you could use in this context? So one, for example, that I use is everything in life is actually a game. It's meant to be fun. It's meant to be played. Some strategies of the game work better than others and give you better results than other strategies do. So, just using the game perspective for a moment, that takes pressure off. It takes pressure off me. We just pulled the Monopoly board out again the other day, and I took on a game strategy, which was the first opportunity to create a monopoly, which is, getting all the properties of the same color. Once you have a monopoly, you can then build houses and whatnot on there. I went all in for that. That's what I was going to do this time. And my wife Marie had two of one color, and I had the other. I had two of one color, and she had the other. Hers were more valuable, and I said, on my turn, hey, what do you want to do? I'm willing to take that off your hands and give you this one. And she said, even up trade. I'm like, okay, you got a deal. And then I piled up and started building all these houses. And that was like, if anyone landed on there, I was in the money. The problem is I got, in the game, the strategy, that was the strategy I was playing. This time around, when I landed on with whether it was chance or community chest, making an assumption everyone knows the Monopoly enough that those are the cards that you pick. And the card at random said something like, assessed so many dollars per house. And I'm like, oh, I just built 8 houses on these properties that like took all the rest of my money. And I'm like, I'm done. I lost the game this time. But it was, sure, it was frustrating for a moment, but it was a game. And the reality is life, if the perspective of that life is a game, it's like, okay, 25% of of our revenue just disappeared from one customer. Ooh, but it's just a game. So now from a relaxed perspective, what do we do given this just happened? What are the options we have? You could freak out. You could freak out if you want to, right? Sometimes you freak out even when you don't want to, but that's the game perspective. Katrina, another thing you just said a minute ago was choosing the growth opportunities that come from it. That's a sort of a guiding principle, recognizing that every day I'm going to grow from my experiences. I'm going to learn something, and I'm excited about the learning opportunities. And what comes from me piling up 8 houses on the properties here, and I would have built hotels and I would have gone all out on just those 3, not worrying about buying other ones, to play the game this way. My learning strategy was, okay, maybe use my cash a little bit more conservatively because I didn't have enough cash for the contingencies. That's a powerful growth opportunity that we've gone through and a powerful learning lesson. Now in the game called Monopoly, it's no big deal. You put the board pieces away and then you go have dinner, right? Life isn't, my life didn't change as a result, but the learning opportunity that comes from it certainly helps for the next time around.
Yeah, and I can acknowledge that it's not easy to get to that headspace, right? When we have, let's just say, financial pressures and we are worried about paying the bills or caring for our family, it's not easy to just be like, yeah, here's another challenge. Life is a game. I'll get through it. And so when we have that anxiety and, we're overwhelmed and it feels like there's absolutely no way out, that's where it can be so hard to get ourselves into a headspace where we trust and believe that, we can grow from this and we can come through it and we can be better. So I don't want to take away from the very real, it's easy to kind of talk about this stuff in theory, but when you are in an absolute sort of crisis spot or is super tight, it's not easy to just, shift our mind and be like, cool. So, in those times, that's where it's super important to take care of your mental health, take care of your physical health, take care of, your emotional well-being. And the reason that is so that you sort of feel stronger in those moments to deal with what you need to deal with, instead of feeling like it's going to break you or feeling like there's no way out and then kind of panicking or not knowing how you're going to sort of go on with the rest of your life or taking care of these things or that kind of stuff. So I think this is where strategies such as, having a practice in place to do some breathing, when things are overwhelmed, or having sort of going for walks and getting out of the office, or going to the gym, or packing some healthy food, or making sure that you're eating if you're one of those people who just plows on and doesn't eat at all. I kind of feel like I'm just spouting off the list here, but it's definitely important to know, how do I nurture and care for myself to be at my best when I'm at my worst, if that
Yes.
makes sense.
And I think what's important is what you're describing here is to create proactively a steady state where these things are already in place, as opposed to, reaching a spot where you're depleted and in crisis. So you kind of
Mhm.
load up ahead of time. Your mental health, physical health, emotional self-being, that list of practices: eat well, get enough sleep, um, practice your breathing techniques, or meditation, or mindfulness, or exercise and go to the gym every day. Um, these things do work. There's a lot of science behind how that does set you up in a condition that now, think of yourself as a professional athlete. Your body is your vessel that allows you to perform. And what professional athletes are doing with the level of training is they're getting ready for the big game, and they're doing that. Just let's say we use the Super Bowl analogy. This is that game is in early February, and the training camps begin in the summertime, in August. July and August. The football players are starting their preseason camps. That's months to prepare for the biggest game of their life. So I think, your point about doing the things that matter: breathing, going on walks, taking exercise, time for yourself, eating correctly, sleeping well, all of those things is the equivalent of putting practices in place during the preseason.
Yeah. And I think who your people are too, right? So, if you want to use the sports analogy, who your team is, who you can depend on, who you can trust out there on the field or court, or whatever you're playing. And I do believe that, and there's research to support it, that, having a social network and a support network is vital. And that doesn't mean you need 100 friends. That means that you need, one or two or three key people that you can lean on when things are not great.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think fostering, good, healthy, strong relationships as well, and putting in energy and time to keep those relationships strong is important for to have for challenging times throughout the course of our lives.
Yeah, that's right. So let's pretend that I am your client, and I come to you like, oh my God, the proverbial, poop hit the fan. So the shit just hit the fan, and I'm like freaking out. What do I do? How do you talk me off the ledge? What do you say, and then what do you advise me to go do to just swing the pendulum off? From I'm over here freaking out and bringing it a little bit back towards center.
Well, I'm definitely not going to ever be preaching in terms of like, oh yeah, you got this, it's fine, we're going to get through it. So I spend a lot of time trying to understand, okay, what is the problem here? What is the absolute crisis? What I've learned is that typically it feels like a crisis because of the responsibility or weight that people sort of are carrying on their shoulders to either perform or get something done or meet a deadline. And it's not actually, it's not actually quite as severe as it feels. So helping people to kind of come to, I can kind of reflect that back to people and be like, okay, based on how I'm understanding this is actually more about the pressure that's on you and solely on you to solve this, as opposed to the actual problem itself. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So I do try to get a good understanding so that I can help either reflect back some perspective, or even brainstorm with them. Okay, so what are our options here?
Mm-hmm.
And if there's sort of no immediate fix, then we have to more talk about, okay, so how do we either absorb this? How do we emotionally deal with this? How do we communicate this to someone if we have to have a very difficult conversation? So then we can get a little bit more into strategy or skill in terms of sort of moving it forward.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it kind of depends. Sometimes it's more strategy, sometimes it's more problem solving, sometimes it's more how do we emotionally deal with this, and how do we get to a place where we do believe there is an out, because even at our absolute worst times in life, if we look back 10 years later, we're not in the same place. If we look back 1 year later, if we look back 6 months later, typically we're not in the same place. So we do come out of these things. It's just hard to see the forest from the trees when we're in it.
When the trees are falling on top of you.
Yeah.
So, obviously you're not saying, that it's the weight of responsibility that essentially is magnifying these issues and making them feel bigger and hairier or more monstrous than they probably are. You're not saying, well, avoid responsibility, because we, as especially business leaders who are listening to this program right now, you're looking at, you're here because you aspire to some bigger goal, some bigger vision, and you're taking on some leadership responsibility to help create that and make that happen. So we're not telling you, avoid responsibility and run the other way. We want you to embrace the responsibilities that you have. And I think sometimes keeping and remembering that bigger vision, remembering why you're here in the first place, can give some clarity and perspective. There's certainly been times over my life where I've been like, what the hell am I doing here? This is awful. And then, I take a step back and remember why I agreed to get into that situation in the first place, accept the responsibility or whatever. And then it's like, okay, got it. And then you realize, what, this is a temporary condition. One person that I worked with years ago, who she was the head of HR, she had a phraseology that was, is it temporary or is it permanent? And most of the time, whatever the conditions were temporary positions. Mm-hmm. You might have to do something about those conditions to address them in order to make them go away, but they weren't there forever. It's not like you had your arm chopped off and then now you have to relive and experience what it's like to have only one arm. That would be more of a permanent situation. Everything else is probably temporary, and just now you got to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So let's, for folks who are listening to this right now, if we can give them a couple of those high probability exercises or things to do if they find themselves, they're stressed out right now, the concept of stress reduction. What's something easy that they can do right where they are, either in their car, in their office, in their home, that they could do that just takes a few minutes, that could start to have at least a marginal impact on reducing their stress? What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of, obviously there's a lot of talk about mindfulness and meditation, which it doesn't need to be. So some people have this idea like that's a fluffy thing, doesn't work for me, I need to get stuff done. But I mean, when you look at it physiologically, when you're in fight or flight response, which is, our response to some sort of threat, then the only way to bring your physiology back down to level is to breathe. So that's the reason why there's a lot of support in terms of, breath work, taking some deep breaths, and if you're going to have a panic attack, learning to slowly breathe, deep breaths. It takes time, definitely takes time, and it definitely takes building a practice out of it to learn to sort of regulate your own body's reactions. But the reason that that's in place is because that is the most powerful way to bring ourselves back down. And there's all kinds of things now where your Fitbit reminds you to move or breathe, or, you can set a timer for 2 minutes and just close your eyes. So there's a lot of things that are now in place. There's all kinds of meditation apps, which are not just meditation, but they have, visualizations or calming music, calming sounds, all kinds of options, right? So you could just even take 5 minutes just to take some deep breaths. Is it going to, alleviate all your anxiety? No. Is it going to take your problems away? No. But what it does is it keeps you, if you do that regularly, it keeps you in a place where you know how to self-regulate and self-monitor. And that's important because there's days where, I have anxiety, and my anxiety is there for the whole day because of whatever work pressure, and, my deep breaths isn't taking that anxiety away, but what it does do is gives me tools to regulate myself. And then I know, okay, going for a run after work will help me, or, having a hot bath, whatever it is that I can then listen to my body better. I'm more aware of what I need, and then I can go do those things when my day ends or my time frees up or that kind of thing. So on the spot, I think either, getting up from your desk, taking a 5-minute lap outside, getting a tea, something.
Change your environment quickly.
Change your environment. Yeah, step out of it for a few minutes. Take some deep breaths, close your eyes for a few minutes, any of those things that you can kind of do.
Don't close your eyes if you're driving.
Yeah. There's also another strategy that's kind of opening your palms and and smiling. It sounds kind of cheesy, but the thing is that when you change physically what you're doing, you allow yourself. So when you put yourself into a more open body posture, on a more sort of happy, engaged body posture, it starts to change your emotions. So again, you can kind of just open your palms, smile, and you start to notice there's a shift, and maybe you start to laugh at yourself a little bit, and it can sort of soften the intensity of challenging emotions.
You're reminding me of an experience I had about a week ago, and there was this guy going for a walk along the side of the road, and in the center of town here. And I was driving, and as I turned on the road where he was. He made eye contact, and with this enormous, huge smile on his face, he smiled and waved at me enthusiastically. I've never seen this person before in my life, so it's not like we knew each other and we're excited to reconnect. It was, hi stranger, how are, that's kind of the level of contagiousness that had. What you just said was create it for yourself. Here it is with this other person I've never met before, enormous smile on their face, enthusiastic wave hello, and I felt amazing instantly as a result of that. And I went home, and Nathan was there, my son, Nathan, check this out. And I told him the story, and he laughed about it. So, here it is, just that one, 2 or 3 seconds of his energy and effort put in towards greeting somebody else in that, high smile way, now affected 2 other people. And it was fantastic. So what you just described for yourself because we are talking about what can you do for yourself, that was really the question. I suppose what I'm really pointing out is that there's a contagiousness to it, which leads me to say, surround yourself with people who are positive and energetic and exciting, and maybe someone's big smile can do the trick for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, for sure. And it's I've read too, athletes do the same thing, right? They will put their bodies into the position of what they want to do when they're visualizing or pre-game sort of prep, and it's way more powerful to get your body and into how you're wanting to be feeling or what you're wanting to experience versus like, I'm in a ball and I'm all mad and
Right.
I'm not going to feel good when I'm like that. There's just no way. And so even our minds and our bodies are a bit of a game in the sense that we can trick ourselves. Our minds are remarkably powerful in being able to, trick ourselves, but shift what we're experiencing regardless of our reality.
Right. And you just mentioned the athletes who put themselves in poses of what they want to accomplish. And certainly from a visualization standpoint, if you watch the Olympics, I love watching the Olympic skiers at the top of the mountain, before it's their turn, and their eyes are closed, and they're kind of going through the motions as, leaning as if they're going down the course. And of course, they're just standing still at the top of the mountain. And that's one example that comes up. Another one is, this past spring I coached baseball with Jay Reynolds. He's a guy who's on ESPN radio. He's got the nighttime slot, which enables him to coach baseball during the daytime. And he coaches the high school softball team. And he was saying that there are times when he's taken a player behind the dugout where they don't have to worry about everybody watching them, and kind of put them in that Superman pose. You make the fist, you put your arms on your chest out, powerful Superman, or Rocky pose, with the arms up over your head. That physiological state is hard to feel miserable when you're demonstrating what it's like to be like arms overhead and as a champion. So there's real simple things you can do with your body almost instantly.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go into wrap up mode. So if there's kind of that one most important thing that you wanted people to walk away with that we haven't already talked about, what would that be?
Sorry?
If there's one most important thing that you want someone to take away from today that we haven't already talked about, what's that? Let's add to the pile. One more doozy, one more zinger.
No pressure. No one to put me on the spot here.
Well, let's experience pressure for ourselves, right?
Honestly, I think as human beings, the most powerful thing that we can do for ourselves is to embrace challenges and to believe that we are strong enough to get through the most painful and horrible circumstances. And when we can be gentle with ourselves and realize I'm not at my best right now, but I know I can get there, that belief in ourselves is more powerful than anything. And again, I don't want it to sound fluffy or cheesy, but I think many of us can have a perspective of like, we want life to be easy and we want it to sort of just work for us. And of course we do. But when we realize that, even the challenges and even the pain, things are still working. It's just, those things are the things that teach us what we need to learn and, show us that we can't take life for granted and all of those things. If everything was just easy and simple, well, we would all probably be very different people.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you just triggered something for me too. There's a study that I read, and it was actually a TEDx talk, and I wish I could remember the person's name. So I think what I'll do is I'll find it, write a blog that's related to this topic, and put it on completebusinesstransformation.com. So if you're watching or listening to this now, and you're like, thanks for the cliffhanger, what's the answer there? I'll find it. I promise. I'll find it, and we'll get it up there. But and the other thing you could do is if you want to be reminded, you can go to businessresultsradio.com and just we've got an opportunity for you to ask questions. You could type in the question, so what's that resource, or what's that TEDx, or what's that what's that person's name, and I'll find it and we'll talk about it again there. The point that you made was we're wired for challenges, and it expands us. And this person's TED Talk was that there's data that shows in the identical situation, those people who have the belief that they can handle whatever comes at them, their results are fine. Their stress levels are fine. They don't have adverse effects the way that people who don't already possess that belief about their ability to handle challenges. So, that's critical, not just for business leaders, because you can now train your team to believe that in themselves. You can train your children and your family to believe that. And this is a powerful parenting lesson too. Kids have struggles as they get into middle school and high school. Life gets, it's the first time that they're dealing with this level of stress and challenge. And, obviously you can't be there and do everything for them for the rest of their lives. So you've got to start to teach them to be self-sufficient. So helping them develop the belief in themselves and the confidence that I can handle this. Whatever comes up, I can handle it. I'll figure it out. If that's, I love that that was the answer to, what's one more thing? What's the zinger thing? That's a great zinger thing to throw out there.
Yeah. Yeah. We need to believe in ourselves.
So as a recap, there's a lot of things that talk about what can you do to form the baseline so that you are elevating your base condition in the first place in terms of sleeping well, eating well, exercising well, taking care of your body, taking care of your emotions, etc. Then when something happens, at least open up the possibility that changing your environment, doing some quick breathing techniques, even the opening your hands, palms up and smiling can have an immediate impact for you. And then ultimately making sure that you have confidence in yourself that you can handle this. And all of those combined should help with not just your stress reduction, but also getting you back to a place where you're back on solid ground, your foundation is solid, and now your results can start to change positively for you again. Which is why we're here, Business Results Radio. So I love that. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. As a reminder, businessresultsradio.com. If there's anything you want us to talk about, and that's not limited to, sort of mentor conversations with one of the executive mentors. Katrina's here with us today and can answer stress reduction. But maybe you want to talk about something that's totally unrelated to leadership or personal development, and you want to get into, hey, how do I XYZ strategy, or how do I launch a new, whatever. I mean, I'm not telling you what to put. I'm giving you ideas as examples. So you can go ahead and plug them in at businessresultsradio.com. We do monitor these, and we'll shape our content based on what you're asking for. Until next time, all right, take care, everybody. Thanks, Katrina.
Awesome. Thanks. Bye.
Hey, Pete here again. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that video. And I invite you to come back to this video channel, or go to the podcast channel for Business Results Radio. Check it out, subscribe, give a 5-star review, and go ahead and share it with your friends. Until then, we'll see you again.